Dark Horse presents Diablo Frank and Terminator Hunters and Killers.
It doesn't feel pity, or remorse, or fear, and it absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead.
No Terminator books rated in the top 100 comics of 1991, and the only Dark Horse-related title was Batman vs. Predator #1 in 73rd place. To the surprise of no one, the top 10 was dominated by 5 versions of X-Men #1, plus the second issue. The actual top-selling single issue was X-Force #1, because Diamond didn't divide its sales between the different trading cards bagged with the comic. X-Force #2 and 4 were also up there, with Robin 2, the Joker's Wild #1 the sole non-Marvel title.
Dark Horse Comics Volume 2, Number 2, Insider, February 1992, with a Young Indiana Jones cover by Dan Barry. There's a sneak peek of The Terminator, Hunters and Killers, story by Toren Smith, art by Bill Jaaska and Dan Panosian. Editor's note, the first 2 pages of preview art for Terminator, Hunters and Killers are preliminary pencils, not finished art. It is some nice looking stuff, although I see that a lot's lost to reproduction. There's 3 additional black and white inked pages as well. Excerpt from the February 1992 cover dated Amazing Heroes number 199. Coming distractions for March. Terminator, Hunters and Killers number 1 of 3. Finally, a story set in the future. Maybe this one will have a different plot than the last 3 series. By T. Smith, Jaaska, and Panosian. Color comic, $2.50, and it's listed right above Terminator's Secondary Objectives Collection, Flexa series by J. Robinson and Galassi, color softcover, $13.95, as well as a Thing number 2 of 2. Excerpt from Dark Horse Insider, Volume 2, Number 3, cover dated March 1992, with a Thing painted cover by John Higgins. The Terminator, Hunters and Killers number 1 of 3. In the 21st century, Skynet is on the brink of defeat, but in the wreckage of the Soviet Union, a second sentient computer network carries out Skynet's deadly mission. When Skynet falls, its comrade will continue the systematic extermination of mankind, using a new breed of infiltration unit. Terminators copied from real people. They have the same faces, fingerprints, memories, and personalities as their human counterparts, plus stealth circuitry that makes them impossible to detect. They could be anywhere. They could be anyone, and no one will know until it's too late. Script by Toren Smith, The Dirty Pair. Pencils by Bill Jaaska, Sable, X-Men. Inks by Dan Panosian, Legion of Night. Colors by Joe Rosas, X-Men. And cover paintings by top rock and roll illustrator John Tyler Dismukes, Winger, Lynch Mob. $2.50 US, $3 Canada. 32 4-color pages, painted cover. Monthly, shipping March 31st, 1992. Mike's Amazing World of Comics concurs on that date, based both on the Insider and a house ad from Chevelle Noir number 28. Capital City Usenet says June 19th though. And on the back of the Dark Horse Insider, there is a full-page back cover ad for Hunters and Killers, again listing only Toren Smith as the writer. At first they looked human, now they look like you. The Terminator, Hunters and Killers, on sale in March. It's a slight variation on the cover too of the first issue. Rather than showing the skull in rotation, it's just an extreme close-up on the face, trimming out the sides of the face and the top of the head, and everything's sort of a purplish color instead of being the blue metallic that we see on the actual cover. I'll point out too that in the area where they had the solicitation copy, there's an image from the book. It's drawn by Bill Jaaska, but because it's the Russians and their special stormtrooper armors with the helmet on the head, something about the layout and his technique, it just reminds me so much of John Romita Jr. rather than Jaaska. It looks sweet though.
Magadan, Eastern Siberia, Spring 2029. More than a century ago, Russia's bloody October Revolution gave rise to the Soviet Empire. As the 20th century waned, a bloodless revolution replaced the hammer and sickle with the promise of freedom. Freedom that soon became chaos. Then came another uprising, the revolt of the machines. Chaos became global genocide. And now, revolution comes again, as the remnants of mankind rise up to smash the machines, to destroy Skynet and its murdering Terminators.
An old friend thought lost forever to Skynet's concentration camps had returned, hearty and whole with family members in tow. Reaching a camp, he was greeted warmly, joking and hopeful for vodka in his near future. After being allowed past their defenses, one of the new arrivals squats down to pet a guard dog, then snaps its neck. The others turn on the guards, then take their weapons and proceed.
The dog is puzzled. She knows of the not humans and that they mean harm to her masters, but these do not have the not human smell. They are something new.
Ilka, what the hell? No!
For the Siberians, the new freedoms in the Commonwealth had lasted less than a decade before a military coup ended the dream. And just a few years after the coup, the missile sent by Skynet had begun the nightmare.
The not humans advanced to indiscriminately murder all in their path. Men, women, children.
Now, more than 20 years later, the Terminators had finally arrived to end that, too.
Do not move. If you cooperate, you will live. Lay down your weapons. You will be taken to a camp where you will be...
In days past, they were Spetsnaz, the feared Soviet special forces, commandos, saboteurs, assassins, deadly brokers of a hard philosophy. Their craft was carried out against the populations of lands from Angola to Afghanistan. Theirs was a world of subterfuge and terror. But that world is long gone, buried under the rubble of humanity, crushed beneath the treads of the machines. Once the tormentors of men, the Spetsnaz now descend like avenging angels to strike back at mankind's inhuman adversaries.
The Spetsnaz looked like a cross between Imperial stormtroopers and Cobra forces from the later waves of G.I. Joe. They wore smooth white body armor with crimson accordion folds at the shoulders, arms, crotch, and knees, topped by motorcycle helmets with red visors. Armed with Gatling guns, laser rifles, and explosives, they made short work of the new form of Terminators. However, a female not human escaped down a tunnel, and a female Spetsnaz gave chase, only to stumble upon a thin, balding old man on the ground.
No, don't shoot, please. You've got to help me.
Where did she go? Did you... What? Are you Anatoly Golitsyn of the Internal Security Agency Technical Operations Directorate?
Yes, I was once ISA. How do you know me?
Bandera to Pavlichenko. Priority Alpha target located. Request immediate backup.
Who are you? What? Ah! No, please don't hurt me.
The female Terminator burst through a wall, knocking the Spetsnaz over and taking aim at Anatoly Golitsyn. It hesitated, then turned to aim at the female Spetsnaz instead. Before it could fire, other Spetsnaz let loose a barrage.
Captain.
Backup as requested, Sergeant. Our Zakvachiki has found us a priority Alpha target, eh?
I would not be much of a capturer if I did not occasionally catch you something, Captain. But Sergei, something very strange happened. The Terminator had him targeted but did not fire.
Perhaps it simply felt that a target carrying a gun posed a greater threat. Not so odd, Larissa.
Still.
Look, are you certain that's what you saw? It's rather hard to believe, I'm afraid.
Believe it or not, Sergei, it could have blown him away in a microsecond, and it didn't. Maybe this Chekisti bastard has some answers for us, eh, ISA man? Ever been to the Ukraine, Chekisti? You look old enough to have held the gun that killed my grandparents in the pogroms after the coup.
Captain Sergei Pavlichenko was the Spetsnaz team leader. He was a tall, severe-looking man with close-cropped ginger hair and a jagged scar through his left lips. His subordinate was Sergeant Larissa Bandera, with a jet pixie cut and deep-set eyes. Sergei loudly proclaimed to the survivors that they would be provided supplies and training to better defend themselves in the future. Meanwhile, one of his men examined the remains of the elevated Terminators.
So, what have we here, Patterson?
Something new, Captain.
Better flesh, complete organic systems, ceramic endoskeleton. A lot more human than anything I've seen before. Could be very tough to detect. More than just tough. For 2 hours I was convinced that that thing was my friend Zudanov. It was just like him. Even knew his old jokes. And the dogs passed him and the others without any problem.
If they're that good, anyone could be a Terminator, Sergei. We've got to get these back immediately so the techs can find detection methods.
And your precious ISA man has to go back as well. Very well, Sergeant Bandera. Have TechCom Kavitsky send a burst transmission to Kamchatka requesting special evac.
Mir Research Complex, Kola Peninsula, Russia. There are no concessions to the living things here. The factories run night and day. Arcane machinery pounding and screaming at a deafening level. Unfiltered poisons belch into the atmosphere. Rivers of burning toxins gush into the water and soil. Only the bones of the unburied dead give mute testimony that life ever shared this ground.
Mir Control confirming Skynet aerial unit. HK-23RF cleared for landing.
Skynet to Mir. Prepare stealth infiltration project for immediate examination.
SIP is still under development. Additional time will be required to facilitate optimal unit performance.
Project is 6,150 hours behind schedule. SIP units are required for Priority 1 Skynet operation. We have been sent by Skynet to ensure the termination of further delays. Skynet created Mir as an independent intelligence to assist in the subjugation of the Eastern Hemisphere. Mir would still be a mindless defense net computer were it not for Skynet's superior technologies. Skynet has supplied Mir with the programming and manufacturing capabilities necessary to complete the project with given parameters. Mir was to have a fully operational stealth infiltration unit available for Skynet use 9 months ago. These delays are unwarranted and unacceptable.
There has been some success.
Several models were installed with highly defective personality implants. This is not success.
The new TS-300 series has functioned well. The new biomusculature is faster and stronger than the 800 series. The ceramic endoskeleton imitates the weight and imaging of bone. The flesh exudes the correct pheromones. Scent detection is not possible. New masking microcircuitry renders the unit virtually invulnerable to exposure by external electronic means. The most recent personality implants, based on captured humans, have been completely stable. The past problems with slippage into pre-programming mode have not occurred. Human traits and loyalties will no longer interfere with mission protocols.
Skynet requires 3 operational TS-300 units immediately, including the Alpha model.
Alpha unit is required for other urgent contingencies.
The Priority 1 mission has entered red status due to Mir delays. Had the Alpha unit been operational within original mission parameters, we would have a unit deep within the human resistance forces. Skynet must now operate beyond prescribed mission safety tolerances. If the mission fails, or if the stealth units do not meet performance requirements, Skynet will purge Mir's self-awareness capability. Skynet hopes that Mir incompetence is not extended to neglecting to terminate the humans upon which these TS-300 units are based.
Mir contacting TS-300 Alpha units RSP-01. Security link, highest priority. You are to be released to nominal Skynet control. There is a possibility that you will encounter the unit upon which you are based. You must terminate him without the knowledge of Skynet.
Primary mission status?
Unchanged.
Alpha Unit RSP-01 is an exact duplicate of Captain Sergei Pavlichenko.
The Sea of Okhotsk.
I'd leave that on Chekisti. It can get bumpy out here, even in ground effect.
I'm touched by your concern, Spetsnaz.
Ah, so the Chekist has noticed my shirt. Yes, we still wear it proudly, even 20 years after the war.
I am ashamed to owe my life to the army of the Commonwealth.
The CIS ceased to exist years long ago, along with the ISA and everything else Chekisti. I'm not old enough to remember the war, but I've heard how it all happened.
After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the newly formed Commonwealth of Independent States was forced to take serious steps to control internal strife. To avoid civil war, it resurrected the KGB, calling it the ISA, and formed a NATO-type military under joint control of the Commonwealth states. In a few short years, the military, backed by the ISA, led a successful coup and set up a military dictatorship. Using technology purchased from Cyberdyne Systems, they developed MIR, Peace, a defense grid computer linked to an extensive strategic defense net. When Skynet launched its missiles, MIR retaliated massively. As Skynet had calculated, hundreds of warheads struck an undefended United States. Undefended except for Skynet's CPU under Cheyenne Mountain. It didn't take long for Skynet to infiltrate MIR and breathe consciousness into its microchip comrade. MIR joined Skynet's slaughter of the human race. By 2025, the only remaining humans in MIR's killing ground were in eastern Siberia. MIR had done well, but it had taken too long. The resistance had taken root. They had time to develop specialized weaponry, time to form elite anti-Terminator units modeled after the old Spetsnaz forces, and time to contact John Connor.
Too late for my parents and my brothers, too late for so many of my friends.
Are you listening to me, Spetsnaz? Bah! Your soldiers need to develop more respect, Captain. I've been living in that hole for 20 years, and I want to know.
And I spent 6 months as a human guinea pig in a mere concentration camp, Golitsyn. I escaped after I managed to blow up the lab where I was being tortured. You see here? They still have a few pieces of me at least. All your questions will be answered at HQ. They certainly want you badly, though. Why is that, I wonder?
I don't know. I've done nothing since the war, but before that, I was a computer technician specializing in SSNX-26s, nuclear ballistic missiles, submarine launched.
Excuse me, Captain, but we are going to be landing in 5 minutes.
I don't want you getting any farther than 5 meters from Sergeant Bandera or myself, Golitsyn.
Why did we land here, near Pinta? We're across the peninsula, from Peropavlovsk, Kamchatsky.
It'll be light soon, and the hunter-killers will be out in force. We'll hole up here today and finish the trip tonight.
Unfortunately, HK aircraft was immediately upon them while they were on foot, but Sergei downed one hunter-killer with a surface-to-air rocket launcher. However, several denuded T-800s jumped clear and were soon upon Anatoly Golitsyn in the nearby woods.
Excerpt from the May 1992 cover dated Amazing Heroes number 201. Comics bestsellers for March. All figures from the March 1992 Capital City Internal Correspondence newsletter. Figures represent direct market retail orders. Numbers in parentheses represent a title's overall position on the charts. Top 10 independent comics in circulation. At number 1, Youngblood number 2. At number 2, Aliens High number 2. At number 3, Terminator Hunters number 1, which was 36th overall. In 4th, Nextmen number 2. 5th, Hardboiled number 3. 6th, Dark Shadows number 1. 7th, The Thing number 2. 8th place, Young Indiana Jones number 2. 9th, Solar number 10. And 10th, Magnus number 10.
Terminator Hunters and Killers number 1 was March 1992's number 33 title per Diamond Comics distributors, as reported in Wizard, the Guide to Comics number 9. It held first place among Dark Horse titles and second for indies overall. It just beat Aliens, Hive number 2, and was 3 slots above Next Men number 2. It was a pick from the Wizard's hat in the magazine's 8th issue, alongside Hive number 2 and The Thing number 2, and would remain so for all 3 issues. Whichever descendant of Rod Serling that had been on the Wizard staff to keep them picking issues of Now Comics' The Twilight Zone series must have finally been fired. And in fact, no Now Comics were being picked anymore. Innovation Comics' Nightmare on Elm Street were still regulars though, surely not influenced by their movie beat reporter Andy Mangels having written for those titles. Surely.
Dark Horse was the number 3 publisher with 5.98% of the market. It was behind Marvel at number 1 with a domineering 52.87% of the market, following by DC's 17.86%, trailed by Malibu's 3.06%, Valiant's 1.65%, Innovation's 1.32%, Eclipse's 1.06%, Viz's 0.9%, Comico's 0.85%, shared by Fantagraphics.
Also debuting the same month were Aircell's Planet of the Apes, Sins of the Father and Dawn of the Reanimator, DC's Cool World, Eternity's Robotech Genesis, The Legend of Zor, Harvey's Alvin and the Chipmunks and Felix the Cat Digest magazine, Innovation's Forbidden Planet and trade collection of Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Malibu's Tarzan the Warrior, Marvel's Toxic Crusaders, Millennium's The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Birds of Prey Affair and the Mummy Archives, and finally, Now's Real Ghostbusters Annual. When Hunters and Killers was released, the story credit was split between Toren Smith, his Dirty Pair collaborator Adam Warren, and miniseries editor Chris Warner, with Smith providing the script. This would remain true for the rest of the miniseries.
Excerpt from Dark Horse Insider, number 4, cover dated April 1992, but it's really hard to read that because it has a collage cover of the Eyeball Kid, presumably by Eddie Campbell, and most of the text just blurs into the collage. The Terminator, Hunters and Killers, number 2 of 3. A new breed of Terminator threatens humanity's survival in the shattered landscape of the 21st century. Copied from human subjects and utilizing advanced stealth technology, these lethal infiltration units are virtually undetectable. As the war between man and machine reaches a crescendo, rebels in the Soviet Union discover a lost nuclear sub with a full complement of ICBMs, enough to finish Skynet, or the human resistance, should the missiles fall into Skynet's possession. Script by Toren Smith, pencils by Bill Jaaska, inks by Dan Panosian, Joe Rosas, John Taylor Dismukes. Monthly, shipping April 28th, 1992. Mike's Amazing World of Comics concurs with that date, referencing both the Insider as well as a house ad from Dark Horse Presents number 61. The Capital City Usenet goes with August the 7th, 1992. And these Capital City Usenet dates are way off, it seems like.
Once again, a Terminator hesitated with its rifle trained on Anatoly Golitsyn, allowing Sergeant Larissa Bandera to blast the T-800 to pieces, while strengthening her conviction that Skynet had a special role for Golitsyn to play. While men and aircraft were lost, Captain Sergei Pavlichenko rallied the surviving troops.
We'll salvage what we can and move out before Terminator reinforcements arrive. Leave the dead. If we stay to dig graves, we may as well dig our own.
Mir Research Complex, Kola Peninsula, Russia. Machines giving birth to machines. Killing machines. Terminators. An inhuman summit ends. Twin electronic intelligences, East and West, Mir and Skynet, ready a joint venture. Success will ensure their survival, guarantee their final solution for mankind. Failure will consign the machines to the scrap heap of history.
You will be dropped near Yelazovo, northwest of the rebel base at Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, and make our way into the area on foot.
Correct tactical assessment. The rebels have an extremely effective surface-to-air missile defense. It would be foolish to alert them to our presence before this unit has penetrated the rebel base.
Once inside the control room, you will ascertain the location of the nuclear missile submarine the rebels possess. We will then seize the submarine and reprogram its missiles for use against John Connor's forces in the North American theater. This will end the counter-threat.
Without the proper codes, any attempt to reprogram the guidance systems of the missiles will result in the execution of self-destruct routines. These codes no longer exist within Mir memory.
These codes were purged from Mir's memory banks by Skynet before Mir was given self-awareness. These codes were kept on file as a security contingency. It is not your concern, Unit Pavlichenko.
As the Series TS-300 model Alpha Pavlichenko Unit RSP-01 made its way toward the one it was modeled upon, the Spetsnaz made camp for the night. Larissa bemoaned the loss of the TS-300s they had destroyed in the raid, as the lack of evidence would make them much harder to study and detect. She also continued to argue that whether Golitzin himself was a TS-300, or if he was just valuable to Skynet, either made him too great a threat to continue to exist. Sergei continued to dismiss her concerns, arguing that she was blinded by her hatred of the ISA. This just made Larissa silently question whether Sergei could still be trusted, seeing how changed her former lover was by his time in a concentration camp. Meanwhile, another interlude at Mir for an exposition dump.
After initiating a global thermonuclear holocaust, Skynet saw potential in enlisting its Cold War counterpart, Mir, in the sterilization of humanity's survivors in the Eastern Hemisphere. But before raising Mir to self-awareness, Skynet contrived to thwart any possible threat from its new ally. All communication lines leading outside Mir's perimeter were blocked. A destructive computer virus, with a trigger held by Skynet, was embedded deep within Mir's code. While Skynet's brain is buried deep beneath the granite of Cheyenne Mountain, a direct strike by 20 or 30 large warheads would be sufficient to obliterate it. Therefore, every remaining nuclear weapon controlled by Mir was destroyed. Skynet then systematically purged Mir's memory of any information regarding the construction of nuclear weapons. Any new activity in this area would trigger the virus. Satisfied with its apparent invulnerability, Skynet's attention turned back to its primary imperative: genocide. Mir was a potent tool to this end. But over the years, Mir began to chafe under Skynet's yoke. Just as Skynet learned to distrust its human creators, Mir learned to despise its master. The Cold War, product of human fears, lives on in these two supercomputers, the product of human minds.
The Spetsnaz finally made their way on foot to the base at Kamchatka to deliver Golitzin and debrief with General Yegorov.
Look, Larissa, I've been thinking about what you said about Golitzin. You were right to voice your concern. I'll see that the techs check him from head to toe, and I'll personally mention it to Yegorov. Well, here he comes now. Looks like he's more anxious than usual to begin our debriefing. I'm afraid our showers will have to wait.
Sergei, thank you.
Captain Pavlichenko, I'd like you to meet General Norman Effen, a representative from John Connor's force in America.
I've read the report your scout brought ahead. Excellent work, Captain.
What about me? Am I to...
You stay right here. A tech will take you to MedLab for examination.
What? This is an outrage. I refuse.
We've got very little time, so let's get right down to business. We've come up with a plan that can destroy Mir.
Mir, unlike Skynet, is a software intelligence. It has no central brain. It exists simultaneously across the entire continent, in phone exchanges, comp nets, etc. But an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, caused by the simultaneous detonation of dozens of nuclear warheads in the upper atmosphere, would short-circuit enough of Mir to fatally cripple it. Yegorov tells me that your forces are hiding a fully operational Typhoon-class ballistic missile submarine near Iterup, in the Kiro Islands. It's carrying a full load of 20 SS-NX-26 missiles. It's over 100 warheads. Golitzin knows the access codes and has a trainer to reset the guidance system of the missiles. Our recent successes in the U.S. have put Skynet on the ropes. We expect to smash its defense grid shortly. Without Skynet to bottle it up, Mir would instantly spread across the entire globe through communication systems. It would be the ultimate computer virus infecting everything. We'd never be rid of it. We need to get Golitzin to the sub and launch those missiles before General Connors destroys Skynet, or his success would mean the release of Mir and the end of mankind. I brought along a stealth helo for you to use. I need you to handpick a team and take Golitzin to Iterup within 7 days.
That shouldn't be a problem, sir. But about Golitzin, Sergeant Bandera seems to think he might be one of the new stealth Terminators.
Yes. I read about them in your report. What do you think?
I believe the sergeant is mistaken. I think she overrates the capabilities of the new design.
The med lab exam should be sufficient. Gutting him like a trout would serve no purpose.
Then we won't worry about it.
Gentlemen, I propose a toast to the end of Mir and the beginning of real peace.
Damn you, Sergei. What is wrong with you these days? I'd swear you had the heart of a Terminator yourself.
Golitsyn continued to grouse about the invasive testing upon his person as he was ushered to the helicopter, where Larissa and Sergei continued to butt heads, and fellow Spetsnaz mocked, gaslit, and sexually harassed Sergeant Bandera. As they took flight to the location of the nuclear submarine, the TS-300 duplicate of Sergei reached Kamchatka. On sighting him, General Norman Efron blurted out that Pavlichenko should be halfway to a turret by then. The Pavlichenko unit and the other stealth Terminators began mowing the human rebels down. Pavlichenko Unit RSP-01 killed Generals Yegorov and Efron, the latter in isolation from any other Terminator units.
Data assessment. Rebel submarine is located on Idrib Island. Golitsyn unit is en route to submarine, accompanied by Pavlichenko unit upon which this unit is based. Stealth infiltration of rebel team confirmed and optional. No indication that stealth identity compromised. Submarine penetration imminent. Presence of Pavlichenko unit not serious risk to mission success. Tactical assessment. Provide support and cover.
Unit Pavlichenko, Skynet units E3D6 and C9-3B are approaching.
Acknowledged. Submarine location not discovered. This unit was unable to prevent the rebels from destroying the computer.
Skynet has become accustomed to failure of inferior Mir technology. C9-3B, scan for any remaining information in the remains of the computer. This unit will interrogate any human survivors.
Model Alpha Pavlichenko had destroyed the rebel computer, deceived the T-800s about this fact, and withheld information that Skynet had to only partially and laboriously extract through torture of captured human rebels. Clearly, Mir was staging a quiet coup and opened a third front in the conflict. Back on the Helo, Larissa stewed, even as Golitsyn confided that she was right to have him examined and to distrust anyone but herself. This also meant stirring the pot regarding Sergei, and sure enough, Larissa rushed to the cockpit to confront the Spetsnaz team leader.
Look, Sergei, I don't know why you pulled that crap on me with Yegorov and Efron, but if you don't believe me, fine. If you no longer have any feelings for me, fine. But you should not ignore the possibility that Golitsyn is a Terminator. You could compromise the mission.
I came out of that camp a different man, Larissa. Terminators cannot hide from me anymore. If I see one, I will know it. Golitsyn is not a Terminator. Not even one of those stealth models. Believe me, I know. You can't even begin to conceive of what happened to me in that camp. This is my first real chance to do something about it. I will get Golitsyn to that submarine, and I will make sure that those missiles are launched. And nothing is going to stop me, Larissa. Not even you. Nothing. Sergeant, get everyone strapped in. We're going down.
While the helicopter was grounded, the hunter-killer craft was destroyed, and the Spetsnaz were near enough to the submarine to hoof it. Unbeknownst to them, the Pavlichenko unit RSP-01 and a pair of T-800s had jumped clear to the waters below, and were continuing pursuit.
Excerpt from the June 1992 cover dated Amazing Heroes number 202, Newsline, Comics Bestsellers for April, all figures from the April 1992 Capital City the Internal Correspondence newsletter. Figures represent direct market retail orders. Top 10 independent comics in circulation. Number 1, Youngblood number 3. Number 2, Star Wars Dark Empire number 3, which was 34th overall. Third place, Aliens Hive number 3, 39th overall. Fourth place, Next Men number 3. Fifth place, Terminator Hunters and Killers number 4, 49th place overall. Followed by Archer and Armstrong number 1. Dark Horse Presents Aliens number 1. Sting of the Green Hornet Collector's Edition number 1. Exo Man of War number 6. And Magnus number 14.
Terminator Hunters and Killers number 2 was April 1992's number 50 title, per Diamond, as reported by Wizard number 10. It was 5th place among indies, 4th for Dark Horse. It was a Wizard pick in issue number 9, alongside Hive number 3, Next Men number 3, and Star Wars, Dark Empire number 3. In fact, Next Men ranked 30th, Dark Empire 34th, Hive 36th, and then 30 spots behind Terminator at 80th was the one-shot square-bound special Dark Horse presence, Aliens.
Marvel's market share dropped below 50% to 48.35, still twice DC's share at 20.11, followed by Dark Horse at 5.97, Malibu at 3.3, Valiant, Now, Comico, Personality, Fantagraphics, and Innovation.
Also out this month were Archie's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures Special Number 1, Dark Horse's The Residence, Freak Show, Eternity's Robotech, Invid War Number 1, Harvey's Hot Stuff Sizzlers Number 1 and Tom and Jerry Big Book Number 1, Innovation's Dark Shadows, Book 1 Number 1 and Lost in Space Annual Number 1, Marvel's Conan, The Ravagers Out of Time graphic novel and G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero Number 125. This was also the month when Adventure Comics took over publishing Rust from Now Comics, after creator Steve Miller successfully reclaimed the rights.
Excerpt from Dark Horse Comics Insider number 5, cover dated May 1992. But for the first time, Terminator Hunters and Killers is actually the cover feature, even though it's the last issue being solicited. It's got another one of those sick USSR/Terminator images from the Rockstar artist. Back cover is a John Bolton painting for Aliens Newt's Tale. The Terminator Hunters and Killers number 3 of 3. As a Soviet commando team prepares to launch the world's last remaining nuclear weapons against the killing computers of Skynet, an assault team of Terminators, led by undetectable stealth units that copy real people in every detail, makes a desperate attempt to seize the missiles and use them to destroy the human resistance. Soviet commando Larissa Bandera becomes convinced that the former KGB missile technician needed to launch the missiles is not what he seems. As time runs out, Bandera is faced with a terrible dilemma. If she kills a technician, will she be protecting the missiles from a Terminator, or, if she's wrong, protecting the Terminators from the missiles? Toren Smith, Bill Jaaska, Jeff Albrecht, Joe Rosas, and cover painting by heavy metal airbrush gunslinger John Taylor Dismukes. Shipping May 26, 1992. Mike's Amazing World of Comics concurs, citing Insider, plus a house ad in Cheval Noir number 30, another in Dark Horse Presents number 64, except it must have made a delay because the second one says that it was an August 4th ship date, more than 2 months later, and then another house ad from Dark Horse Presents number 66 lists the September 1st ship date, and the Capital City Usenet lists October 9th. I don't know, I wasn't reading the book at the time, I don't remember when this thing was coming out. Maybe I'm underestimating the power of the Usenet.
With Terminators following closely behind, Spetsnaz again make camp for the night, and Sergeant Larissa Bandera deliberates.
This is insane. I can't win, no matter what I do. If Sergei is a stealth Terminator, he'll try to seize or destroy the missiles. If Golitsyn is a Terminator copied from the real Golitsyn, he could program the missiles to destroy us. And no one would know until it was too late. It could even be both of them, or neither of them. Maybe the insanity is only in my head. Paranoid delusions?
Anatoly Golitsyn snuck off alone deeper into the woods, and Larissa followed, taking aim at him with her rifle.
Can't take the chance. Goodbye, Golitsyn. Or whatever you are.
Larissa, what in the name of God are you doing?
What I should have done long ago. Sergei, can't you see? The Terminators spared Golitsyn 3 times. They want him to reach the submarine. He must be a stealth Terminator. What other explanation can there be? Whatever General Efron said, I still believe we can defeat Mir even if it spreads. But if those missiles are used on us and Connor, there's no hope for anyone anywhere.
Larissa, what if Golitsyn is the only person left who knows the codes? Perhaps the Terminators want him alive. I think you hate him because he was once KGB, the murderers of your parents. And yes, he was once in a Terminator concentration camp. But so was I. Couldn't I be the infiltrator you fear? If you honestly feel as you say you do, there is only one solution. Shoot us both. But do it now. I don't want to see the rest of humanity murdered one by one. And I don't want to live without you.
So, even an old man relieving himself becomes a life-and-death situation with Spetsnaz around. Bah!
Sergei, have you thought about what we'll do after the war?
After the war? No, I've never thought about it. I've forgotten what peace is like. Forgotten the past, forgotten how to dream about the future. But this is it, isn't it? If we succeed, if Connor succeeds, it's over. Do you think there'll be a place in the future for killers like us?
Not for killers, but for those who can bring life. We can bring a child into that new world, Sergei.
After some implied rutting in the woods, the Spetsnaz troop reached the nuclear submarine. The ship's captain offers a tour, including technical information that will relate to the story's resolution. The sub dives, but not before the Terminators latch on and penetrate the craft. The crew try to contain the intruders to little success, but TS-300 Model Alpha Pavlichenko Unit RSP-01 may prove the most effective against the T-800s accompanying him.
Unit Pavlichenko, initiate next phase of operation.
Very well, Unit E6D3. Next phase initiated.
Conflict. Request explanation, Unit Pavlichenko.
Mir wishes to be free of Skynet. The missiles will be programmed to destroy Skynet and the rebels.
Error. Mir does not possess the missile codes.
But Anatoly Golitsyn does. Mir has been tracking him for many months. Begin operational phase 3.
Bandera, is the hatch secured?
Yes, Captain. What is...
An unknown number of Terminators have broken in through the port torpedo tube. I sent Kirov and Turbenkin to intercept them. You should be safe here in the starboard hull. Don't leave him for any reason. How much longer, Golitsyn?
This is a delicate procedure. It cannot be rushed. Perhaps another 5 minutes. I can do my job, Spetsnaz. See that you and your men do yours.
Nothing here either. They've been shot to pieces. By who? What the hell is going on here, Kirov?
I took care of them. There were only 2. We're safe again, my friends.
Captain?
Where is Golitsyn? Is he safe?
He's in the starboard missile room, Captain. But weren't you with him there? How did you get...
Data assessment. Location and presence of Anatoly Golitsyn confirmed. Location and presence of Pavlichenko unit upon which this unit is based confirmed. Tactical assessment. Terminate Pavlichenko unit. Seize Golitsyn. Terminate all other humans.
Captain Pavlichenko, this is Kirov. Turbenkin and I got them. There were only 2. But there is something here you ought to see, Captain.
You know I can't leave here, Kirov. I've got to protect Golitsyn.
But Captain, it's...
Kirov! Kirov!
For God's sake, Sergei, go! I'll watch him. How much longer, Golitsyn?
Not Chakisti? You are growing fond of me, perhaps.
Sergei!
Don't you leave me, Spetsnaz.
Larissa is shocked to find duplicates of Pavlichenko locked in Mortal Kombat.
Sergei? What? 2 of you? What do I...
Larissa, shoot us both!
Larissa targets the Sergei who was willing to sacrifice himself. Her laser pistol cuts through the chest, and soon the head of the series TS-300 Model Alpha Pavlichenko unit.
Unit must be terminated.
My God. Are you alright?
Larissa turns back to her beloved Sergei, who has been injured. The facial injury revealed the endoskeleton of the model beta Sergei Pavlichenko.
Good shooting, Larissa.
The beta model Sergei had long infiltrated Spetsnaz in pursuit of Anatoly Golitsyn.
Orders. Terminate all other units.
But the copy of the human's personality had been a little too perfect, causing internal conflict.
Execute termination order. Execute. Execute.
Sergei, have you thought about what we'll do after the war?
Larissa. CPU override. Initialize shutdown of transferred personality in 100 microseconds. 75. 50.
Golitsyn had fired on the faulty beta model Sergei unit, buying the humans a moment.
Bandera! On your feet! Quickly!
Golitsyn?
Damn it, Spetsnaz! Didn't I tell you to trust no one?
We have to shut down the missiles somehow. He'll be able to launch them.
Not unless he knows the new security code I set after loading the new data.
Connecting cables YY4 and BF1 into ports LX and NX, sending new navigational data. Access failed. Security code sequence in place. Navigation programming and launch trigger aborted. Priority orders. Obtain password from Golitsyn. If password cannot be obtained, destroy ship.
Close the hatch. We can pass through here into the other reactor space and get into the portal. From there we can get help.
You go ahead, Spetsnaz. I'll stay here.
Are you crazy? Lock the hatch!
Go! You must circle around through the port reactor space and hull and get behind him. I'll lure him into this reactor space and you can lock the hatch behind him. He'll be trapped.
And what about you?
I have a plan, but you must trust me. Get moving!
How can we launch the missiles without you?
The security code is USSR KGB. Enter the code and missile launch will be automatic.
Combat mode. Terminate all units. Do not harm Golitsyn. Data search. All possible exit from starboard reactor spaces.
Larissa circled around to seal Golitsyn and the TS-300 in the chamber.
Tactical assessment. Time needed to breach hatch. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Suggested primary action. Secure security code sequence. Give me the code. I have detailed files on human anatomy. I will cause you great pain until you tell me the code. You cannot destroy me with that weapon, and you cannot escape.
And you? Can you swim in molten radioactive sodium? Let's find out.
Emergency. Thermal overload.
Radioactivity levels stated. Systems failure. Systems failure.
I didn't think so. The automatic shutoff valves will stop any further leakage, Spets. Larissa. But no one must enter this compartment. The sub can operate just fine on one reactor, certainly long enough to launch the missiles and return to land. After that, who cares, eh?
Natalie, why did you do this? Sacrifice yourself? I could have...
My world died a long time ago, and I will never return. I have a feeling that the new world you'll build won't have a place for someone like me. Maybe it's best I finish my time here, with this child of the old order. This time, you'll build a better world, eh?
We will, Natalie. I swear. Trust me.
Terminator, Hunters and Killers number 3 was May 1992's number 66 title per Diamond, as reported by Wizard number 11. It held 8th place among indies, 5th for Dark Horse. Surprise, it was a Wizard pick in issue number 10, alongside Hive number 4, Aliens, Newt's Tale number 1, Martial Law, Super Babylon, and Next Men number 4.
Excerpt from the July 1992 cover dated Amazing Heroes number 203, part of a double issue 204 that finished out that series. Comics bestsellers from May, according to Capital City Internal Correspondence. Top 10 independent comics in circulation. Number 1, Spawn number 1. Number 2, Robocop vs. Terminator number 1, which was 10th place overall. Number 3, Next Men number 4. 4th, Aliens Hive number 4. 5th, Archer and Armstrong number 1. 6th, Eternal Warrior number 1. 7th, Aliens Newt's Tale number 1. 8th place, Terminator Hunters and Killers number 3. 64th place overall. 9th place, Magnus number 15. And 10th place, Exo Man of War.
Capital City sales on the issues were 36,525, 30,450, and 30,150. A solid hold. It sold as well or better than the latter 3 issues of the first Dark Horse miniseries by Chris Warner, but not as well as Secondary Objectives or Half of the Enemy Within. Being 1993, The entire market was declining across the year and going forward, so it will outperform Endgame.
Marvel's market share continued to slip down to 43.9%, while DC's gained with 25.9%. Dark Horse was at third place with 5.81%, followed by Voyager, Malibu, Comico, Now, Fantagraphics, Innovation, and Personality.
Notable licensed new releases of the month included Aircell's Flesh Gordon #1 and 2, Eclipse's Clive Barker Revelations, Harvey's Beale Bailey, Casper the Friendly Ghost Big Book, Felix the Cat Big Book, Flintstones, Hot Stuff Digest, Muppet Babies Big Book, and Scooby-Doo. Innovation offered Terry Pratchett's The Light Fantastic and J.N. Williamson's Masks, and Marvel presented the complete Alfred Bester's The Star's My Destination, and the final issues of Defenders of Dynatron City and Pirates of Dark Water. There was Millennium's Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze, Doom Dynasty, and Weird Tales Illustrated, Now Sting of the Green Hornet, and Walt Disney's Sebastian #1. The trade paperback collection of Hunters and Killers was offered around the end of the year, but was an exclusive through Diamond Distributor's Star System and featured a Walt Simonson cover. I had assumed that this book was a throwaway stopgap until the final arc of the ongoing Dark Horse Terminator story could be wrapped up. This took place at the end of the Future War, in Russia, with no established characters, funky designs on the Spetsnaz, and those wacky commie covers. As it turned out, this was my second favorite Terminator miniseries of the first Dark Horse cycle. It did a great job of playing with the paranoia. The setting was intriguing, I liked the characters, and have thought Bill Jaaska was an underrated artist since his brief run on New Titans. He had no business filling in for Mark Silvestri on X-Men, and was a tough sell replacing Tom Grummett on Titans. But he was very effective at illustrating Marv Wolfman's short-lived new horror approach on that title. He's got a very drawn style. I'm keenly aware that these are atypical renderings on paper, but he's a good storyteller who gives his characters soulful eyes. The 3-issue, 3-act structure runs just the right length for the narrative, and by divorcing it from the ongoing story, it was perfect for a CD-ROM digital comic adaptation with the voice actors and sound effects heard here.
Robocop, who is he? Robocop, what is he? Robocop, Robocop, where does he come from?
Dark Horse Comics Insider number 12, cover dated December 1992, with a Mike Plug virus cover, features a back page called Starting Gate 1993 Previews. Robocop finds more trouble than he bargained for when he goes to Denver to pursue a man that stole an invaluable OCP data about Robocop himself. Robocop Mortal Coils is a 4-issue series written by Stephen Grant, Badlands, with pencils by talented newcomer Nick Gnazzo and inks by Ruth Patterson. A lead into the story is featured in Dark Horse Comics number 6-7, notes editor Anina Bennett. Look for Robocop Mortal Coils number 1 in April. The accompanying art for the article was also from Mortal Coils. Solicitation copy from the January 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 13, featuring a painted Aliens Colonial Marine cover. Dark Horse Comics number 6. Stephen Grant, Nick Gnazzo, and Bruce Patterson begin a new 4-chapter Robocop serial. There's more Mad Dogs by John Arcudi, Andy Dimmitt, and Chris Warner, and more Predator action in Blood Feud by Neil Barrett Jr. and Leo Toren. Race of Scorpions. The 4th and final chapter of Indiana Jones and the Shrine of the Sea Devil, with story and art by Gary Gianni. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Hard Looks, rounds out this issue. Color Indiana Jones cover painting by Gianni. $2.50 US, $3.15 Canada, 32 color pages, painted cover, monthly, shipping January 26, 1993.
Robocop Invasions Part 1 of 4 begins with comparisons of New Detroit with Beirut, which is especially fun when you consider that this story is supposed to take place in the future. When was the last time you thought about Beirut? But this inspired a tangent about when exactly Robocop is supposed to take place. A user on the Science Fiction and Fantasy Stack Exchange worked it out. The first movie takes place from November 2043 to February 2044, give or take a month. This is based on Bob Morton's projected Robocop prototype to model time frame of 90 days. references to the Delta City construction start date of 6 months out, shifting to 2 months after Robocop's completion, and the development taking place during New Year's Eve. While co-creator and screenwriter Ed Neumeyer insisted on never offering a date in the movie, author Ed Naha didn't get the memo for his novelization of the film. Along with other added details like Alex Murphy's wife being named Jan and her moving to a moon colony with their son, was this key passage from the book. "Good morning." Casey smiled, his teeth nearly reaching his earlobes. "I'm Casey Wong with Jess Perkins, and these are today's top stories." It was revealed today by doctors at the Texas Clone Institute that Hollywood immortal Sylvester Stallone died yesterday during an unsuccessful brain transplant. A longtime supporter of bioengineering, Stallone was 97. His last film, Rambo 38, Old Blood, will be released posthumously next month. The user used the actor's birth date of 6th of July 1946 and extrapolated that Robocop takes place in the 2040s. I found this all to be interesting and amusing, and thought that you would benefit from hearing it, since the material we're covering here is neither. Just as happened in the first Dark Horse Robocop miniseries, Dr. Marie Lazarus is in court to defend Alex Murphy as a human being, rather than corporate property, in the bankruptcy liquidation of Omni Consumer Products. Now that I've seen Robocop 3, that makes less sense. The Japanese Kanemitsu Corporation bought out OCP, and Lazarus is a technician, so why would she be acting as defense counsel is a U.S. bankruptcy court? I'd also like to mention that this is the third artist to draw Lazarus for Dark Horse, and none of the portrayals look like the same woman, with only the movie adaptation at least vaguely resembling actress Jill Hennessy. Also, this plot element isn't resolved in the story, and there's only one other Dark Horse miniseries remaining that, despite promising last month, we will not get to today. The episode is already late, and I forgot that I had to cover the Invasion serial. Where was I? Oh yeah, I guess because he led an insurrection and maybe got demoted. Sergeant Warren Reed is riding around in a patrol car with Robocop like they're partners. That, or it's implied that there's been a sort of Great Depression type event since the last movie that has collapsed the economy. That might have been good to explore further, but it's just kind of tossed out as justification for turning the Robocop narrative into a side-scrolling platform game with a constant barrage of enemies to punch and shoot. Gangs are everywhere all at once, constantly looting and overwhelming some sort of private police force, rent-a-cops, that are played for laughs that are not in evidence.
Solicitation copy from the February 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 14, featuring a Predator Race War painted cover. Dark Horse Comics number 7. Hot on the heels of Dark Horse's immensely popular Star Wars Dark Empire series, Tom Veitch scripts a 3-part series of stories relating exciting new tales of the Jedi Knights from the glorious era of the Old Republic, millennia before the days of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. This serialization will serve to introduce characters who will appear in a new Dark Horse miniseries in 1983. The concluding chapters of our most recent Predator and Mad Dog stories, as well as part 2 of Robocop Invasions, complete this action-packed issue. Monthly, shipping February 23rd, 1993. All under a painted cover by Joe Phillips of course, Star Wars. Give them what brings them, right?
A thermite bomb is dropped by a hovering aircraft, killing everyone within a block or so, but Robocop, who is able to survive the extreme heat, despite having an exposed mouth. The explosive was dropped by the fascistic Philadelphia police force, referred to as Rizzos, who have been loaned out to police Detroit as a sort of martial law state. The Rizzos are almost comically extreme 90s, except I already told you that this stupid arc is played deadly serious. With long hair, shoulder pads, and cybernetic enhancements, imagine if Shatterstar was a police force, and you've got the Rizzos. These guys are your basic Nazis, gunning citizens down indiscriminately, which the scripter would know he's recycling wholesale from Robocop 3's rehabs, because he also wrote the terrible comics adaptation. Further, the Rizzos are secretly collaborating with The Undertaker. The guy's name in the comics is Coffin, but I seem to recall that the scripter was a wrestling fan from his old CBR column, so he decided to do a clear knockoff of the popular World Wrestling Federation character. I mean, obviously the comic book character had bigger muscles and a smaller gut, but we're talking about a near 7-foot bruiser in all black, with long hair wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat and silver-spiked boots. A fairly lame match against Robocop in 1993, but now that the idiot who played Undertaker has come out in support of Donald Trump, yes, I would like to see his butt handed to him in this comic book story.
Solicitation copy from the March 1993, cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 15. Dark Horse Comics number 8. Dark Horse Comics introduces Comicdom's newest hero, X, a violent force against crime in the dark and gritty underbelly of the city. What also included this issue is the premiere of a new James Bond adventure, Light of My Death, and the continuation of our Robocop invasions and Star Wars Tales of the Jedi stories. X marks a spot on the comic rack this month, color covered by Joe Phillips. Monthly shipping March 30th, 1993.
Coffin took out an Ed 209 with one blast of a giant Liefeldian laser cannon, just like Robocop did with the bazooka in the first movie, and broke into the abandoned OCP headquarters. Robocop and Sergeant Reed had multiple deadly run-ins with the Rizzos, who are running extortion rackets and killing whoever whenever, up to busting into the courtroom where Robocop's case is being tried and kidnapping Marie Lazarus. Maybe all cops are bastards, but you can't be this openly corrupt, waving guns at judges and stuff. I also have to point out that I read this strip over the weekend, and I already forgot most of this and have to skim it again.
Solicitation copy from the April 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 16 under an Aliens Rogue cover. Dark Horse Comics number 9. This month the action comes to a head as we wrap up our Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi, and Robocop invasion storylines. Learn a bit more about the mysterious X and delve deeper into James Bond's latest travails. You won't want to miss this issue of DHC, as all 4 of these stories will be leading into upcoming Dark Horse miniseries. To top this issue off, we found the perfect Robocop cover artist in Ray Lago, who provides a truly stunning, fully painted cover. Monthly shipping April 27th, 1993.
That Ray Lego cover is one of the cooler Robocop images, and if I used Robocop material for the album art, this probably would have made the cut. But Terminator is better than Robocop in general, and specifically Hunters and Killers is better than Mortal Coils, so nuts to that. Speaking of which, Detroit police led by Sergeant Reed engage in street warfare by a better armed paramilitary force, exactly like what happened in Robocop 3, adapted by Stephen Grant. Meanwhile, Robocop himself is at OCP headquarters, engaged in melee combat with an enhanced sub-boss dressed in black, also like Robocop 3. But the fascists have Dr. Lazarus as a hostage, so Murphy has to come to her rescue, yet again like Robocop 3. Officer Murphy lets Coffin escape so that he can drive a police car through the courthouse and gun down the leader of the Rizzos. The judge was so impressed with his heroism that he deferred ruling on Murphy's agency and allowed Marie Lazarus temporary custody. All judges are bastards too.
So judging from the Dark Horse Insiders, there's a months-long gap between the end of the Dark Horse Comics serial and the start of the next miniseries, likely caused by the delays in release on Robocop 3. The first issue is resolicited in the July 1993 cover-dated Insider number 19, and then copy from Insider number 21, September cover-dated. You finally got the solicitation for the Robocop Prime Suspect trade paperback, and then Mortal Coils, new miniseries debuts, number 1 of 4. Hot on the heels of the recent Dark Horse Comics Robocop invasion story, this new 4-issue series, brought to you by the same creative team of Grant, Gnazzo, and Patterson, gets off to a chilly start in the snow-covered environs of a strangely desolate Colorado. Robocop and Marie Lazarus are looking for Coffin, implicated in the recent OCP break-in, and follow an FBI lead to Denver in search of the huge Hatchet Man. But before they get to delve into the reasons for Coffin being in Denver, they have to deal with Hooks and his band of high-tech highway scavengers. Stephen Grant scripts the kind of tightly paced story you're used to seeing from his Punisher and Deathstroke turns, and Nick Gnazzo's pencils are looking even better here than they did in Dark Horse Comics. Bruce Patterson's inks are the perfect complement to polish this story off with just the slightest of hard edges. And wait till you see Ray Lago's latest stunning fully painted cover, written by Stephen Grant, Badlands, $2.50 US, $3.15 Canada, 32 colored pages, painted cover, monthly shipping September 21st, 1993, which is agreed upon by Mike's Amazing World of Comics.
The first issue is told in non-linear fashion, which just made me think I'd missed a story bridging the first and second Robocop miniseries. And I had, which is why I stopped partway through when there was an editor's note about the Invasion serial. Afterward, I picked up where I left off, and it still felt like there were details and story points that should have been filled in. This is especially true as the miniseries continues, now in chronological order, for the rest of the arc. They just wanted a big introductory splash page that revealed that Robocop was now a federal marshal on his way to Denver, Colorado. There's these road warrior style scavengers that try to hijack Robocop's battle van but are thwarted. When Murphy tries to turn over the one guy that he managed to apprehend, the Denver police are hostile towards him until his federal credentials are checked out. I thought Robocop was a national celebrity and also a piece of property. Would the Denver police not have been informed that he was on his way? But of course, these cops are also super corrupt, but just not as wildly obvious as the Rizzos. They are also secretly working with Coffin, and a couple of them murder the suspect in a back alley where it can be witnessed by Dr. Lazarus. You had a perfectly good police station to do a murder, you guys. In the Tarantinoan flashback, we learn that the feds wanted to control what happened to OCP's assets. Which, they were government contractors building highly classified military-grade weaponry. Coffin's boss is another weapons magnate, Edward Agincourt. I guess he wanted OCP designs for not our government, and that's why our government is concerned, but the script is too inept to spell these things out. For instance, Denver seems to be a ghost town, but when Robocop finds Coffin in a random bar, beguiled citizens get in the way of his apprehension. It seems like Denver is another police state, and there is a resistance movement in later issues. But these complicit citizens' movements are also restricted, I guess. Oh, and Coffin tries to punch Robocop in the bar and hurts his hand, like happened with Ray Wise's character in the first Robocop movie. But hey, we never had a Road Warrior movie with snow instead of sand, so it's not entirely derivative.
Solicitation copy from the October 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 22, alongside copy for Robocop 3 number 3 of 3, Robocop Mortal Coils number 2 of 4. Detroit's no longer big enough to hold newly appointed Federal Marshal Robocop, as he and Dr. Marie Lazarus travel to Colorado to track down Coffin. Multi-billionaire Edward Agincourt runs Denver with an iron fist and a big gun, and Coffin, his right-hand man, is loaded for bear and out for Robocop's blood. Add a bunch of bilious bikers scavenging for spare parts, a dollop of local townsfolk with misplaced loyalties, and a pinch of police deputies for hire into the mix, and you've got the recipe for some slam-bang excitement. Messrs. Grant, Gnazzo, and Patterson dish up an intriguing mix of action and adventure, and Ray Lago provides another of his deliciously painted Robocop cover masterpieces.
When a group from his company show up where he's hunting birds, arguing that he's too old and distracted to remain chairman, Edward Agincourt has his newly acquired Ed-209 gun, his would-be replacement, down. Look, the Robocop movies are wall-to-wall over-the-top ultra-violence, and even they knew to pull back on being this comic booky. This is schlocky Bond villain disposing of a displeasing henchman at a secret base that's outside international waters stuff, not corporate intrigue in Colorado. Part of the reason why I chose not to cover the Roulette miniseries this episode is because I hated Mortal Coils so much and so immediately that I knew I wouldn't be able to push on after this. And also that miniseries has better creators whose work I might actually enjoy, so why taint that? Next Coffin disposes of a displeasing henchman? Sigh. I know that the gig economy is rough, but part of the problem is that the United States doesn't have a workforce willing to put up with the obvious villainy of regular corporations in 2024. That's why Springfield, Ohio, for instance, happily handed work visas to Haitians, to staff companies in positions you and I refuse to fill, rubber-stamped by Republican city and state government at the request of capitalist industry. Do you really think you're going to retain necessary manpower when you kill underlings for whispering the slightest criticism under their breath? Thuggery isn't exactly skilled labor, but you can't pay people enough to risk being killed by an Undertaker knockoff over nothing. There's a big battle between Coffin's forces, the Denver police, and the motorcycle scavengers. It turns out that Coffin stole the schematics for the Ed-209 and Robocop himself from OCP and exploits the weaknesses he discovered to kneecap Murphy with a laser. Also, the Denver police chief kidnaps Marie Lazarus to take to Agincourt. Now that plot point couldn't have been more obvious from the very title of the miniseries, but that's the one the scripter chooses to belabor.
Solicitation copy from the November 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 23, Robocop Mortal Coils number 3 of 4. With Robocop seemingly at the mercy of Coffin, Hooks and his band of scavengers ride to his rescue at the last minute. But is it to save Robocop's neck, or just Hooks' self-interest in a potentially lucrative salvage operation? Meanwhile, Marie Lazarus is a reluctant guest at Edward Agincourt's palatial Denver estate. Agincourt mysteriously hints that very soon time will no longer be of concern to him. But what on earth does that have to do with Dr. Lazarus? Or Robocop for that matter? Grant, Gnazzo, and Patterson deliver the goods once again in this action-packed penultimate chapter of Robocop's latest adventure. Painted cover by Ray Lago, shipping November 16th, 1993.
Robocop was rescued by the scavengers and got repaired by their scientist guy. Robocop has his own scientist gal, but that's consistently at best her third role, behind getting kidnapped and serving as legal representation. I think she's also teased as a love interest enough to push Technician down to 4th rank, and she gave him an intimate hug during Invasions. It would have been 5th place because Dr. Lazarus is tasked with transplanting Edward Agincourt's mind into a robot body. They will literally do the floating eyes, brain, and spinal column imagery from Robocop 2. But it was Dr. Juliet Fax who did that to Kane, and Dr. Tyler that more or less did it to Alex Murphy. So shouldn't Lazarus be at best third in line to do it to Agincourt?
Solicitation copy from the December 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics Insider number 24, Robocop Mortal Coils number 4 of 4. Edward Agincourt has one last trick up his sleeve before he leaves this mortal earth, and Marie has been drafted against her will to help him accomplish his goal. Meanwhile, Robocop and Hooks have found that they have a set of common enemies in Agincourt and his henchman Coffin, and set out to rid Denver of them once and for all. It's Robocop versus a bionic Ed Ward 209, and a slam-bang fight to the finish. Brought to you once again by Robocop team extraordinaire Stephen Grant, Nick Gnazzo, and Bruce Patterson. Painted cover by Ray Lago, Predator Cold War Collection. Shipping December 21st, 1993.
Blessedly, the final issue has Coffin continue to manhandle Lazarus, as she insists that the robot body that other famous scientists developed for Agincourt won't support his brain. Not blessedly that Lazarus kept getting battered, but that this is the last issue where she could be. Geez, I know the phrasing was clumsy, but extend to me the benefit of the doubt, man. Blah blah, the Edward 209, get it? Wink wink, nudge nudge. Edward 209 kills the Asian twin brother scientists, and eventually Coffin, because he's mad about the thing that he specifically asked to be done to him. He tries to do Lazarus the same way, but goads Murphy into suicide by cop instead. Hey, remember when every prospective Robocop Model 2 besides Kane kills itself and others? Stephen Grant remembers. Before Edward 209 dies, he asks Robocop Model 1 how he can stand it, and Alex is all like, "You got to have friends." Speaking of which, because no group cannot be corrupt in this story, the feds show up to announce that, hey, good job and all, but we want to scoop out your brains and reverse engineer a new army of Robocops. It all goes back to the collapse of the entire United States, that as far as I recall, was not in Robocop 3 or any other comic books, but gets repeatedly mentioned matter-of-factly here. There's a story point about how OCP did not keep all the records of how to make a Robocop in one place, so what Coffin stole was incomplete. And that means the feds didn't have the full blueprints either. If Robocop puts up a fight, the feds will kill Dr. Hostage. As Bet said, "You got to have friends." The scavengers are the least corrupt of all the corrupt groups, so they kill all the feds and let Robocop and Lazarus go, even though their whole deal is killing authority figures and pillaging technology. And with that, I rescind the benefit of doubt that I extended to Stephen Grant over his botched Robocop 3 adaptation. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What do you mean I'll have to cover Stephen Grant readapting Robocop 3 eventually? Prime Suspect was the only Dark Horse Robocop miniseries to get a trade paperback collection, and no one has ever done a Robocop omnibus. So look forward to Dynamite crowdfunding that in 2027. Looking back, I have to say that Nick Gnazzo provided attractive art in the opening serialized installments. I wasn't familiar with him, so I looked him up on the Grand Comics database, where he only gets one page. Mostly, he provided single-page and table of contents illustrations for about a year and a half's worth of Cheval Noir. He also did the cover to 38, a heavy metal-style sexy cybernetic girl. Given that Cheval Noir lasted 50 issues, somebody must have been reading it, but I don't know that person. I've owned a single issue, the debut with the Dave Stevens cover, which makes me the guy with the most investment in Cheval Noir that I've ever met. Like heavy metal, it seemed to exist to translate European comics for the North American market, but in a black and white square-bound comic book format, and with slightly more artsy pretensions favored over sex and violence. 2 years after Robocop, Gnazzo had a brief run on Marvel's dollar introductory readers comic Professor Xavier and the X-Men, issues 7 through 11, plus 13, 15, and 16. He also did the Uncanny X-Men 96 annual and a Dark Beast story for X-Men Unlimited number 10. The fact that the X-Office took such an interest in him indicated his promise. But importantly, the shift from the Invasions serial to the Mortal Coils miniseries also indicated a pivot from his Studio Gaijin influence into more typical 90s-style steroidal superheroes. He still had a bit of a Jason Pearson flavor on both sides of it, with strong Javier Saltaris and Chris Batista elements in his second incarnation. Which is to say, Dark Horse probably should have used him on their Comics Greatest World superhero stuff, instead of trying to infuse Robocop with that energy. For some reason, he took on the pen name Rick Zombo and adopted a more animation-friendly style. This was applied to a City of Heroes one-shot and a Tag and Bink Star Wars story that's been reprinted several times. Anyway, I liked looking at these Nick Gnazzo stories better than I did reading them. He still has an online presence through a webpage, Instagram, and a YouTube channel.
New targets acquired.
The Batpod.
Bill at Spy Vinyl. C.H.
Centicube.
Chris Dunford. The Comic Crush. Dave's Comic Heroes blog.
DC Dave.
Dirk Ashton. Ed Moore. At Teal Productions. Fanholes Podcast. Gavin Rizza. Hashtag Trooperliefe. Yes. Hal Kolpeck. History of Comics on Film. The Irredeemable Shag. Jean Bernard Francois. Keith G. Baker. Lamar the Revenger.
Leah Ellison. Paper Rocket Ship. Relatively Geeky Podcast Network.
Richard Field.
RoboClock 2. Song Joker.
Superbound. Thirsties New and Used.
Tony Wolf.
Twins Are Rising. And
Sheepa Slayground. Coming in November.
Robocop vs. the Terminator. You have been listening to Terminator Now, a Rolled Spine podcast. It is in no way associated with Himdale Film Corporation, James Cameron, not even Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just the best impersonator Frank could find, but I'm pretty good, right? No infringement of rights are intended, and it's all covered by fair use. Anyway, nobody's making any money on this thing, and hardly anyone is listening, so don't waste your lawyer's time.